city budget meetings to order. Thank you, Scott. Before anything, I'm going to just recognize the mayor who has an update she'd like to share about the city manager process.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And I apologize to colleagues for not getting this on the agenda, but I realize it would be helpful for all of council and the public to hear an update on the city manager search. As council may recall, we are working with a consultant, Dr. Ian Coyle. His recruitment and outreach resulted in a very healthy pool of applicants of around 40, in fact, applicants. Council was invited to give feedback on the recruitment brochure before Dr. Coyle sent it out. Senior staff and council also responded to a needs assessment survey on the qualities and experiences we were seeking in the city's first city manager. The search team is comprised of 4 members of Common Council, 4 department heads, and myself. We've met and are moving forward with round 1 interviews. This, I will just state, is the confidential phase of the search. There will be full day interviews with finalists in November. And those full day interviews will, of course, be open to all of council as well as key stakeholders. And that then will be the public phase. I wanted to provide this update because there is still an anticipated recommendation from the search committee to be able to bring a recommendation to Common Council at the December 6th meeting. So yes, indeed, it is an aggressive timeframe, but it is one that we are moving forward with, I believe, at a good pace. So that's it for my update report.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I ask for a motion to open the public hearing, I will just, for everyone's edification, council and the public's, remind folks how things are going to go. I will call for a motion and a second on the budget following the public hearing, which will provide us the ability to discuss it. We will not be voting on the full budget tonight. In fact, as you can see on our agendas, we are not voting on the full budget for a while, November 1st. For the members of the public, tonight is a public hearing. You were able to fill out a comment card once I open the public hearing and provide that to weigh in on the items being discussed. There is also a public hearing on the budget tomorrow night, and the third and final public hearing on the budget will occur on November 1st. For folks who are looking to participate remotely, registration will open at 9 a.m. every day. There is a public hearing, so it happened this morning, tomorrow morning, and on November 1st. Registration will close at 3 p.m. each day in accordance with our normal practices. Just to review, budget amendments are handled as follows. Some departments or members of council may put items on what we colloquially refer to as the list. These items will not be voted on until the meetings that are set aside for discussion of budget amendments. If you have a proposed amendment, the Chief of Staff has shared a digital copy of the Excel spreadsheet that is tracking all of these proposed amendments. You may send it to her and myself. There will be opportunities for us to update from the Chief of Staff as to what the list has electronically after each meeting. And there will also be opportunities throughout for council members to ask questions on the tax cap, tax rate, overall budget, and so on and so forth from the mayor, the controller, and the Chief of Staff, who is behind the curtain there. Budget amendments will be presented in an order organized by the chair, myself, as in accordance with how we organize every other agenda in the city. So tonight will be the Ithaca Police Department, Ithaca Fire, the Reimagining Public Safety, and Human Resources and the Public Information Technology. At this time, I will call for a motion to open the public hearing on the 2024 budget. Rob Gearhart, seconded by Tiffany Kumar. All right, all those in favor of opening the hearing? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. I have one comment card. If there are any members of the public who wish to bring me a comment card to comment, please do so at this time. And Faye Gugakis, I will recognize you. For public's edification again, just like our normal meetings, the default is 3 minutes. I will keep time. And just for folks' knowledge, we may lower to 2 minutes in the event that we have a lot of turnout, but tonight we don't. So Faye, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I feel very emotional after this vote. I've been voicing this concern about Cornell giving more to our community from way before the last agreement. I want to read something that I saw today in the New Ithaca Times, if I may. I'm quoting here from the article. During a special meeting of the Common Council on September 20th, Cornell's Vice President of University Relations, Joel Molina, said that if the agreement is not approved, Cornell's contribution will revert to zero in 2024. This would result in a 1.6 million budget shortfall for the city in 2024. The reason I'm reading this is because I am stunned to see that someone like that said that. I mean, that Cornell is basically cruel and heartless. And I don't say that just lightly. Anybody reading that statement will only come to that conclusion. That is a betrayal of our community. And I have a lot to say about what I want to see in the budget, which I'm going to run out of time and I will come back tomorrow. But our community is growing. I've been here for 40 years and we have serious problems. And if Cornell and also Ithaca College, because I've been pressing Ithaca College to give more to our community, okay, even though they're not in the city, okay. This has been an issue for a long time. There's been many voices in previous mayors, but like I said last time, when Svante went on CNN and he was asked twice about what concerns are for our city, he mentioned potholes twice. And I'm not against the individual. I'm factual. I'm talking about what he said as representative of our community, bringing that issue to a national, not only national, but international on CNN platform. And when I came to City Hall to say I saw that on CNN, and I was shocked, did anybody respond? No. Okay. So for me, accountability is important. Okay. Our actions of the past bring us to the present. And there was a member from the public when I made this statement last time when we were discussing this. She said, why did you bring up Svante? It has nothing to do with it. Yes, it does. If you go on a national platform,
Respectfully, Faye, that is your 3 minutes.
Talk about something like that,
Thank you, Faye. That is all the comments that we received. May I have a motion to close the public hearing? Council may, I would remind everyone that this is an opportunity for hearing on the budget. So Phoebe, I'm happy to recognize you. Okay. May I have a motion to close the public hearing? Tiffany, seconded by Jorge. All those in favor of closing the hearing? That carries unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. At this time, I will invite Acting Police Chief Ted Schwartz to the table if he has any prefatory comments. I know we're not doing presentations on the budget, but if there are, I'm sorry, didn't see you, both of you. If there are questions from colleagues, well, Ted, I'll first recognize if there's anything that you'd like to open with, but otherwise we can begin to the Q&A.
I don't have any prepared comments. I did respond in writing. This is Jamie Ramirez, our administrative coordinator, who does a healthy share of our budget work, and we're greatly appreciative of her work. Thank you, Jamie.
Great. Thank you both for being here. I'll turn now to colleagues. Any questions on the IPD budget? George.
Thanks for coming. I noticed that on page 23, towards the bottom of the page, equipment parts, the department base budget is 175,000, and the mayor's proposed budget is almost $100,000 more. Why is that?
George, just for
Page-
colleague. Thank you.
Page 23 of the big one. Sorry.
So that's a update for I did some updated requests, and that's for the tasers and the protective ballistic plates. That's
So-
why I decreased.
Okay, so replacing tasers that are past their useful,
Yeah, so the tasers that we issue to officers are so old that they regularly fail, and taser will no longer service them. So when we have a problem with them, taser will, we will send them back, but they'll send them back and essentially they'll change the software so we can't use them. They're just not, we're not able to get them repaired anymore. So we have to buy a newer model essentially, which is not something we're happy about, but we have to.
so $90,000 is tasers and anything else?
And ballistic. So the tasers are $58,125. They're several $1,000s a piece. And then ballistic rifle plates, the officers would wear active shooter, school response, terroristic threats. That's the only ballistic protections that officers have against a long gun threat. And it's about $30,000 to replace those. The ones we have now have either expired last year or are expiring in 23. And we were not able to find a grant. In the past, occasionally the state has offered grants for that. There are no current grants for those rifle plates.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Rob Gearhart, did I see your hand? Any further questions for Jamie the Chief? Cynthia.
Hi, good to see you. Hi, Jamie. So I see in the narrative that the budget includes 14 funded vacancies with 7 more positions starting December 1st. So could you just talk about how that meets the needs of the department, how you anticipate to fill those positions? Does the budget meet your needs as you anticipate going into the future?
Yeah, great question. So currently we are right in the middle of our recruiting cycle. We had this year, we had 144 people, I believe, sign up to take our civil service exam, which was a steep increase from last year. And large part thanks to our recruiting efforts and our partnership with the recruiter we contracted with. So we've administered some physical fitness tests, but we won't have those, the results back from the written test from the state likely until December, maybe January. We are also recruiting laterals right now. We are currently, we've done interviews on and are doing backgrounds on 3 laterals. There's several others that have to some degree expressed different levels of interest in putting in an application, but have not yet. So we're optimistic to be able to fill a lot of our spots, but the reality is we likely wouldn't fill all of them January 1st. So in our preliminary budget meetings with city staff, we thought it was incredibly important to have those positions filled. And if we are able to fill them prior, the remaining unfilled ones prior to December, I would essentially come back to CA and then council and ask to move those up in months instead of back. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And I presume hopefully, well, we'll see if we have the flexibility to do that. One of the elements that, although we aren't discussing it tonight, is the, in the CJC work plan, which I don't believe we've actually approved yet. But in the CJC work plan, it includes, I think cumulatively about $50,000 for recruiting. And of course, the CJC represents a city-county joint effort. This seems interesting to me because I'm presuming our interest is to recruit for our department. And here we are supporting a fund to recruit basically for an organization that might be our competitor in terms of taking eligible, wonderful candidates. So do you see the CJC work plan or the CJC recruiting efforts helping, harming, indifferent? How would you look at that engagement?
I think that really depends on how they handle what they intend to do with those funds. As council, I think is well aware, we've been partnering with a local expert city resident, DH Goodall, for several years, who for many years worked at Cornell, did recruiting and specifically DE&I, and also has a big data science background, and has been instrumental in changing, we're really able to be data driven and establish relationships with candidates. And I think that's been a huge success for us in being more efficient. I think I've made it known in the CJC meetings, and I would hope that the way the CJC might be able to best help IPD and the sheriffs, as you mentioned, we oftentimes people might apply to both, and there may be competition between the agencies, is I think maybe looking a little broader and, down the road a little more, where maybe the CJC can help to work with our youth, the kids that might be police officers or sheriffs in 10 years, in the schools, at GIAC, at some of the community places where our young people are, sports programs. I think that my personal opinion is that's where it could be helpful. I think as you kind of said, it may be hard to kind of dually recruit for both agencies. The state says when we can test, our tests are the same time. Our processes usually are the same time. So I can't really speak to what they're going to get the money. Specifically, we've hired a contractor, DH Goodall, as I said, to do specific IPD work for recruitment.
Well, I guess since you are a member of the CJC and it would make sense, obviously, since we're funding both programs, both our own internal recruitment efforts as well as the CJC, just to make sure that we're not inadvertently at odds with supporting the recruitment efforts of our department. I love the idea of what you're saying. Could the CJC focus on, or at least, how can we collaboratively build this environment where we can support, obviously, bringing in individuals from our community, whether it's through the youth or elsewhere. I think that's a wonderful thing that would not necessarily be in contradiction with our own interests, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
Phoebe.
I'm a little confused here. Are we talking about what CGC are you talking about?
So we just received an update on the CJC work plan. and
Yeah.
One
yeah,
element of the work
I
plan
heard that.
has to do
Is
with
that the
recruitment,
Criminal justice system or the
community justice center.
community justice center? And I just heard something about competition. Like, where's that coming from? How is that competing with? I heard competition for one, right? And I'm trying to figure out where's this coming from? I just heard this great, like, raw against the whole Cornell, but we sitting here talking about $50,000. Like, is that even enough for CJC? Are we asking for more? Are you asking for more money for CJC? Like, I'm confused right now. Cause I'm like, how is that unless I'm somewhere else that I just sat in a meeting that was just fighting against the, Cornell, but still I'm feeling this energy that is against, how competing got in there. How are those two organizations competing when CJC is about working with community? I don't know. That competing stuff kind of got me stopped at a place.
Chief, I'll invite you to.
Yeah, so we are not competing with the CJC as an IPD. I believe what Cynthia was stating is at times IPD and the sheriff's office or any other agency may be competing to hire candidates on the civil service list. So at times, especially as of late, where law enforcement has trouble recruiting, different law enforcement agencies essentially may be competing for the candidates at the top of the list. Is that answer?
Thank you, Chief. Further comments or questions on this? Rob.
Well, thank you, Chief. I'm not sure this is a question necessarily directed at you, but maybe to the mayor. Is there anything you can update us on about the police chief search?
I can tell you there are candidates for police chief. There is active activity of that particular search and that search team. I can't share any additional details, but I do anticipate further details being shared quite soon.
Thank you, and thank you both. Yep.
Recognize Donna and then George.
Is the proposed deputy city manager for public safety on page 23 or on page 10? In other words, is it part of the city manager's office or part of the public safety division?
Mayor.
It is part of the city manager's position. Now, I will say that these are positions that deputy city manager for public safety is something we have a position description, but the full implementation is yet to be fully worked through.
I think this is an opportune time to also just, since there are a number of restored positions in the mayor's proposed budget, just to remind everyone that these funds are to be encumbered for proposed positions, but not necessarily, to the mayor's point, what the final organizational structure will be. Those things for new positions entirely will go through the appropriate government operations committee and voted on by council. This is just to encumber funds to ensure that those things are funded should they come into existence. You have a follow-up, Donna?
I'm going to ask to see that job description, but I don't need to take floor time to do it.
Turn to George.
Very quickly, and I apologize for being vague. There's a new position at IPD for a data analyst. And when I was at the county meeting the other day, they said they were hiring a new data analyst as well. And they were wondering if that's duplication or whether we'll find work for that person that doesn't duplicate what the county's doing.
So, yeah, the new position for us is a crime analyst, which will primarily handle data. I believe there's more than enough work at IPD there's more than enough work for one person. A large part of that will be helping police officers and investigators compile and have useful data. So just for efficiency so that they can do more police work instead of that kind of stuff. Because right now it just falls on, you know, if an investigator has a case that, or is assigned, maybe there's been a spree of one type of crime and they're assigned to it. Like they don't have any data points to try and help narrow their efforts. So this person will do that specifically for IPD. There's a state crime analysis center that we partner with in Binghamton in Broome County, but it's a regional one. And so if we send them specific requests, they will help do the workups, but they don't routinely provide like kind of ongoing, like this is what you're experiencing in Ithaca, because they cover Broome County, Chemung County, Cortland County, Tompkins County, Tioga County. I think there's like 7 counties they cover. So this will also help us have more local data. And then it will also help us in not only the annual IPD reports, but very often we're asked, sometimes by city officials, sometimes by council, the public, for they want data. And we either aren't able to give them complete data, or we're pulling an officer from their primary job to compile this data. So there's also an outward or public facing component here where they'll be able to help prepare reports and data.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for Chief or Jamie? Oh, Cynthia, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one last question. So I just got to your report that was shared today. So you mentioned that your officers are really eager to partake in training, but of course, due to being so short-staffed at the moment, they're unable to take advantage of that. If we are fortunate enough to be able to bring the staffing levels up, do you have the budget to administer the type of training that has basically fallen by the wayside for lack of ability to engage in it?
Yeah, I think getting through this year, we will be okay. We haven't significantly increased our training budget, and like everything else, the last few years with inflation, the cost of training have gone way up. I think as we look into 25 or 26, that will likely need to be something addressed. But I also was trying to be realistic. You know, we're gonna be focusing on hiring and the initial training for officers. A lot of that we do in-house with a field training program. So I felt that this year it wouldn't be as much of an issue, but certainly following years, once we get back up to staffing, depending on what happens with inflation and, you know, most places that to travel anymore, to do anything for training revolves, the costs have gone way up. So we probably will need to address that in future years.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Phoebe?
Have you spent the money that you had in reserve for training? Cause y'all got money last year for training. So I'm saying if you didn't use it, do you still have that?
So we're obviously still not completely done with this year, and I think we don't have final numbers, but I believe we are a healthy portion through our training for this year.
Any final questions for the police department? Thank you both for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks a
for your
lot.
time.
I will, at this time, call myself out because I actually think I forgot to call for a motion in a second. Yeah. Well, hey, it can happen to me too. Would someone like to move the budget, Rob Gearhart? Moved, seconded by Jorge. Thank you. See, I'll call myself out. I would now invite up Chief Covert and anyone else from IFD who would like to discuss their department's proposed budget. Again, reminding colleagues, there are no prepared presentations. Chief, you're more than welcome to share any opening comments if you have them. Otherwise, we can turn to Q&A.
No opening comments. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight, and I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chief. Opening up to colleagues. Questions for the chief? Sounds like you might be. Oh, Rob, I was gonna say you might be able to report back to former Chief Parsons that you maintained the streak of no questions for the fire department. Phoebe.
Yes, ma'am.
No, I just wanted to know, have y'all gotten that new, cause I know y'all was supposed to update or something for the fire truck,
Sure.
and you got monies last year. Is it
So last year's budget, there was a capital project for a heavy rescue. We are still going through the design phase. It turns out that a lot of companies are dealing with the staffing issues that a lot of organizations are. And we're also, a discussion for another day, but as you know, the economic situation has changed a lot from over the past year. So we're trying to do our due diligence to see if we can get a vehicle that comes closer to the original capital project amount, or whether we need to come back to council and kind of present the realities of the current economic status. And, it's quite probable that the truck would cost more than was originally proposed. So, but we're trying to do our due diligence in that process right now.
Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you, Chief. Any further Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just offer an additional comment, and this applies to IFD, probably IPD, as well as other city departments. And that is supply chain issues that are continuing to impact. So while funds may be available, it is difficult to order a part, a vehicle, and have to wait 18 months, 24 months. So there's some easing up of supply chain, but it's still impacting.
Chris?
Well, will the 3 extra firefighters or the 3 positions get you up to full staffing?
Sure. Great question. So the 3 positions will get us closer to where we were staffing wise in about 2008. So I anticipate trying to do a more thoughtful strategic analysis over the next year regarding the staffing needs of the department. But we identified the 3 positions just to sort of make us a little bit more resilient. Currently, with retirements and injuries and other normal things that happen to a department, our staffing levels keep dipping down below sort of our operational minimums, which certainly affects overtime and affects the ability to get staff to come in to work overtime if they're asked too often. So those 3 positions that the mayor has proposed that are added to our roster, in addition to filling the 3 positions that are open now, and we're actively, going through the interview process, will certainly help quite a bit.
Further questions for Chief Covert? Cynthia?
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. So there's 3 positions for the vacant positions now, but then 3 new positions as of December 1st?
Correct. So we have 3 vacant positions now just from
Okay,
retirements, and in the budget, there's 3 additional firefighters proposed to start December 1st. So to sort of help us become, the word that I've been using is resilient. So we, a retirement, an injury, any of those things drop our staffing levels down, and then we have, just difficulty maintaining our normal staffing levels without overtime. So.
and as a reminder, it takes how long to get through the academy and then into service?
Sure. It's roughly about 6 months. And then the other challenge is there's 2 academies for the academy that we use, which is the New York State Fire Academy. One normally starts in February and one starts in July. So part of the timing is getting that cycle down correctly. So for example, some of my anticipated retirements for 2024, some of them might be retiring after the academy would start by even a few weeks or a month. So, likely, and, I've put in my written statements to council that, I would likely come and try to request temporary positions so that we can get somebody on board, get them in the academy process to kind of minimize the time that our staffing is down. So, and our staff is really great. They recognize the impact of their retirement on, the department and the community, and the best they can, they try to give ample notice so that we have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
They call it the Fall Academy, but it's gotten longer, so it now starts in July.
Any final questions for Chief Covert? Chief, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Scott, I would like next to recognize Mona Lisa Smiley. Is she online? Great. So just while we boot up the computer, again, we'll now be turning to the Reimagining Public Safety budget. Again, no prepared presentations, so I will look to council to see if colleagues have any questions for Mona about the proposed budget. Hi, Mona. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Well, thank you. Hope you're doing well.
Good.
I would invite, if you have anything as a preliminary comment to share, you're more than welcome to do so. Otherwise, I can turn to my colleagues.
I think it's okay to turn to your colleagues.
All right. Colleagues, questions for Mona Lisa? Phoebe.
I don't have a question. I have a comment. I just want to thank you for your patience and for continuing to keep things moving. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Other colleagues, Mayor, anything to add? No. George.
Yeah, I'll second what Phoebe just said, Mona. And do we have any community events sponsored by CJC in the near future? Any
Hi,
trainings or?
George. We don't have any trainings, and thanks for your compliment and second, Phoebe's. I appreciate that also. We are working with a couple of faith-based organizations that we have to look at 2 fall events for before December. We are going to be adding to our community healing working group. Matt Van Houten has identified from our advisory board as someone that's very interested in joining us and helping us create those fall events. So all I can say is stay tuned. I'll definitely make sure that information is shared with Common Council so that everyone knows when the event will be. It'll be publicized also for the public, but we will definitely make sure we get the information to you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any additional comments for colleague or from colleagues or questions? Cynthia.
Hi, Mona. Good to see you.
You also?
So I asked an earlier question to Chief Schwartz having to do with the recruiting budget.
Mhm.
And obviously, we have recruiting within the department and recruiting through the CJC. So can you describe a little how these efforts can support the city departments? Obviously, well, I don't want to use competition because maybe that brings the wrong sentiment, but obviously, we're all vying for the same great candidates. And so how do we support the city while also supporting these recruitment efforts? I just want to help to understand how we're not sort of competing with ourselves to a certain extent.
Right, okay. Well, the task that the CJC has been handed is to look at different ways, be innovative in, strategically looking at recruitment and retention. How do we, once we get these, how do we get the officers? Once we get them, how do we keep them? So we have part of the work that our working group did is we put an RFP out for a consulting firm. We now have one on board. The participation with the county and the city is super, super, super important. I think the difference in what we're doing is we're not looking at the immediate future right now. We're just getting things off the ground with a consulting firm. So we're at like the first level of interviewing to see what, what it's like to be a law enforcement officer, first responder here in Tompkins County. So, that covers the city and the sheriff's department. Once we have that information plan, what we're doing is the company that we hired is called HCA, is a consensus from the group. It wasn't everyone's top favorite out of the consultants that applied, but the group came to a consensus and we used a rubric for scoring. So it wasn't like, oh, IPD really likes this group, so we're going to go with this one. It was really and honestly done by a rubric scoring of our group. And we're looking at different ways that, Tompkins County has not already tried to do the recruitment. What can you guys, they're going to show us different things, different aspects of recruiting. How do we get people interested in this career field again? And then once we get them interested, how do we retain them? So they're working on coming up with a strategic plan that we will be able to implement in 2024 of, following through the recruitment.
Wow, that's really exciting. I really look forward to hearing about the plan as it comes together, and I appreciate that clarification. Thanks so much.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Phoebe, I see your hand. I just want to make sure no other colleagues. Okay, Phoebe, please.
My question is, when we say, okay, is CJC hiring police officers or responders, unarmed responders is my question. So, because I don't know, maybe, yeah. So I'm trying to see on how will that, you're asking for a different set of skills or whatever. So I'm trying to figure out what in which way that would, are they the same? You're asking from the same pool? Yeah.
Well, I think I understand what you're asking. The CJC is not hiring law enforcement, first responders, or anything. We hired a consultant to help us come up with a plan. They're experts in this field. They do the research, they have the knowledge, and what they don't have, they seek from. They're going to be looking for community members, for representatives from probably both common council and county legislatures. They're looking for the expertise within our community to match
Right.
their expertise to create a plan on how we can entice and make it appealing and attractive for people to join our law enforcement.
Okay.
And then once we get them to join into our law enforcement, once we recruit them, how do we keep them? How do we retain our workforce once they've joined?
Okay.
So that's what the CJC is tasked with.
All right. Thank you.
Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mona, for being here tonight. Appreciate you and all your work. I just wanted to respond to Phoebe's question with some information. And this is not specific to the CJC, but the city has retained a consultant who's working on the development of the unarmed unit and looking at recommendation number 1 from Reimagining Public Safety. And that consultant has already been in touch with and has been working with TED and working with others. And that consultant is Kathy Zoner, who has terrific experience as the former chief of Cornell University Police. So she brings a great deal of knowledge, expertise to the table, and it will be great to work with her throughout.
Thank you. Yeah, I know.
George.
Mona, this is just an idea. I want to run it by you and see what you think. Chief Schwartz talked about one way we might improve recruiting is to start young, perhaps with local teenagers. Is that something CJC has explored or might think's a good idea?
Ted and I have entertained that conversation. We've talked about just a very preliminary or beginning stages of how to develop that relationship. So it's definitely been out there, and we've had conversation about it. I think it,
I think we used to do
it'll
that
start young. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
with a,
Well, I mean, we talked about some of the programs that IPD has had in the past, where they were able to engage young people, and for, you know, as time moves on, people change and programs change. So we talked about looking at different partnerships with other youth entities in the community that we could possibly, link into this. So, I mean, it's always a possibility. Like I said, it was just a very preliminary conversation that we had. So I'm open to continuing the discussion and seeing how we build on that.
thank you very much.
Mhm.
Any further questions for Mona? Mona Lisa, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Have a great one.
You too.
Thanks, Mona.
Bye-bye.
At this time, I think I saw Alan in the back room. We'll turn to PIT. And I'll also, because I anticipate questions about some of the proposed restructuring, I want to invite the Chief of Staff, Deb Mollenhoff, out as well. Alan, I would invite any preliminary comments again out of courtesy, but I know we're not doing presentations. So if there's anything you'd like to kick us off with, otherwise I'll turn to my colleagues.
Yeah, no, I provided them before, so in the interest of time, I'll be happy to just answer questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, Jorge.
Alan.
Yes.
I imagine this will come as no surprise to you, but because we've been in conversations regarding cable access. And I'm wondering if, I don't mean to ask for an impromptu update on how that situation is going, but I'm wondering if the new budget accounts for any type of capacity that we would need to continue moving forward with getting our meetings back on cable access, because I know we've talked about a couple of different options, and I just want to make sure that if any of those options don't work, do you feel like you have enough in the budget for alternatives that we might need to pursue to ensure that we get our meetings back on cable access? Because I do agree it's an important issue that we want to make sure that our community get some results on.
Sure. So let me answer that kind of in reverse, if I may. There's no funding in the budget for staff or outside resources that would be able to, say, work the media booth as used to be done prior to COVID and in the more traditional manner that we used to broadcast. That said, I am feeling very confident that we're actually very close to being able to broadcast again. We have, with the addition of the Zoom and YouTube streaming that's now using the room sound system, which has greatly improved the sound quality for our public and our viewers. We have the ability with some software additions in the media booth to actually stream that out just as if it was one of the cameras in the room here. So right now I'm waiting on some software installs and a little programming, which we already have under works. So my hope would be that we could test this within the next month or so. I think the question then becomes, is the day-to-day process that someone's going through right now, for example, to come and set up the Zoom and sit at the desk like Scott's doing right now and various people do for various committees, is that a process that is simple enough to add a few steps in the media booth for that person to do, or then do we need to add some sort of resource? And I don't have that answer yet because I need to see what those steps become. My guess is we might need, or we might be better off having someone who's very familiar back there, who just is more connected to the equipment back there and can do those steps. But I believe we could do it without actually funding a position at this point and having some key staff members that are trained in that. Because even though we do a lot of various committees and meetings, there's a handful of people that tend to do most of them.
Right.
And I think we can do it with the staff we have inside without a lot of added expense. And I realize this has been something that the
Access Oversight Committee's been asking for quite some time. So it is definitely a goal of ours to have live.
Yeah.
We had hoped to hit the budget season. We're not, but shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that you guys have put into it. I know I've been relentless in my pursuit of getting this back on and relaying with you. And I know that you guys have been working really hard for it. So I really appreciate this. And so just want to be clear then that you would advise against trying to allocate any, above the mayor's budgets allocations, even in restricted contingency for any type of additional staff should we, because you feel like we should be good with the staff that we have now in this scenario where we need to get some extra support, making sure that the media booth can operate the broadcast.
I would never recommend against putting resources aside.
Fair enough.
That said, I believe we should proceed as is, and then we can always come back and do a fund request, whether it be very late this year or into the new year.
For sure.
I think that would probably be a better approach.
Okay.
Now, I will say that broadcasting these meetings, I think ties into the community outreach approach, which I'm sure we're going to discuss more very shortly. So I'll just leave that comment for now. But I think it all ties together and we see how important it is to make sure we're reaching everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Cynthia.
Thanks. I'll carry on Jorge's discussion and then get into the budget.
Mhm.
I think it would be great to get it back on cable access. If it is something that's a software thing, I mean, we have these amazing cameras, right? There's like
Mhm.
4 cameras. It used to be we had a person back there who would switch from whenever the speaker changed, they would switch the cameras. But now I think we're used to sort of the Brady Bunch type of thing where we have 4 screens that might just run simultaneously, where you could actually see the entire room and not have to switch from one view to another. So if that's like a technical update that would allow us to televise using our great system that we have and then get us back into cable, it would be helpful. And I do think it is part of an outreach component. I think as I will say, having someone in my house, she's pretty technically savvy, but when it went off of cable and onto YouTube, she just completely lost access to watching the meeting. So to be able to open that up for a big component of our population would be helpful.
May I?
Mhm.
I would say both for the cable audience as well as the YouTube and streaming watching audience, it's important to give as many views of the room as possible. And again, I believe that's something we can do with some enhanced Zoom licensing, which we do have money for right now. What's important for me is to try to keep as consistent a viewing experience between YouTube and the TV. I don't think we want to get to a point where there's different views for one and the other, because it starts to beg the question as to why is one different, even though we're just trying to use some of the great cameras that we have in here, which even though we haven't used in some time are still very, very good cameras, and we do have the facility to use them. So I think we've tried to do this in very strategic pieces, fix the sound, and we've done that. Let's get it on the broadcast station. And then once we've done that, let's see if we can start using the cameras as part of the Zoom and YouTube feed and broadcast on the TV in one move. And I think we can probably do that as well.
Thank you. Getting back to the budget. And I apologize, we actually got these narratives just today, so I haven't read it in advance, so I apologize for that. You start by talking about how you've had vacant or unfilled positions. You hope to hire these positions. And maybe I'm just at this point in the day, I can't make sense of it. Could you just describe how these changes are going to impact or improve the operations of your budget, of your department?
And when you say these changes, you're referring to the larger organizational changes, or are you referring to just what I was talking about in my narrative? Because I just want to make sure I'm answering the great
Let's start
question.
with the narrative.
In the narrative, I was referring to 2 things. We had previously had and was not able to fill a data endpoint analyst. It's basically on the IT side of the department, a help desk person who would do more of the day-to-day, answer the phone, my printer's not working, the more simple tasks. And then in the last budget cycle, that position, since we didn't hire it, we hadn't been able to at the time, that position was removed partially, as I understand it, to help pave the way for the deputy city clerk we added, as well as the event permit specialist we added. So the request was to put that one back in the budget this year and fill that at some point. So we can have a more active help desk experience for our organization, as well as, quite honestly, freeing up some senior people to do the project work that they really need to be doing, as opposed to fixing a printer for someone. It's important to the person whose printer it is, but it's not a good use of that senior person's time. The other one I was referring to was actually the position I'm in, that we have on the books, a department head / clerk, and we also have a senior IT member, and I'm in both roles at this point. So I was saying that I'd love to see one filled permanently and the other filled permanently as well. So basically going back to the levels we were prior to the retirement of Julie as the last department head and city clerk.
But you're looking, sorry if I may, if you're looking to have these two positions basically be standalone, essentially individual department heads of two separate departments, correct? So if I'm understanding correctly, we're going to unwind the previous merger.
So that's what the mayor put
I'm going to
forward.
just interject really quick, Alan. Just to remind us that these are to encumber funds for possible positions. As I mentioned earlier, when the chief of police was here, any organizational change will go through the appropriate council committees and be voted on by council. I think the mayor's illustrative changes are to show council what might happen. But no matter what we vote on, those changes in the org chart will not take effect until council votes for them to be. Sorry, Alan, thank you.
No, that's fine. I was going to say similar. I think what the mayor's proposed, and I tend to agree with, is that we have the need for better communications. Now that is internally in the organization as well as externally with our members of the public. We have, I think, a large need for more community outreach. And I think that's not just our our traditionally public facing groups. I would love to see the clerk's office do sessions, I guess is one way of calling it, outside of City Hall. Why should you come to our building to get a dog license or a marriage license? We could come to your neighborhood once in a while. So that type of thing as community outreach, I'd like to see turned on as well. We've tried to make things available in the electronic field as much as possible, but we also need still that face-to-face work with people to hand a disabled parking placard or a dog tag or something. So I think there's a lot of ways we can use the idea of communication and outreach. And there's no doubt that everything we do hangs on the technology in the organization, including improving the access to members of the public, the number of things that they can do online that they would have needed to come to City Hall or one of our departments for otherwise. So I'm definitely in favor of approving funding that would allow us to align some of these goals next year and then just find out, what exactly are the positions we need. I'm not advocating for a split of the department or advocating right now to maintain them. I think we need to hopefully fund some of these positions and then really spend the time and effort and figure out what's going to work best for the goals of whoever's on council at that point, the new city manager and the department heads that we'll have at that point, knowing that we have a lot of change coming there as well. So I want to have options, I guess is the best way I could say that. If we put some funding aside for this, then we have options. If you choose not to, we don't make changes and we just continue to try to keep giving the best service we can with the people we have and the structure we have, which I think we've done an awfully good job of that through a transition of a long-term city icon like Julie's retirement. Not to mention all the changes going on in the organization as a whole. So I think we'll be successful either way. But I think we definitely could use some staffing in some of those certain areas, especially around communications and outreach.
I'll come back to you for more follow-ups. I'll turn to the mayor, George. I saw a hand over here, and then come back to you, Cynthia.
Thank you. And thank you, Alan, for all of your work, and thank you for your comments just now. I will say that in the last 4 years, 5 years, the complexity of our IT challenges and issues have grown tremendously. And the IT part of the department serves everyone in the organization. We sometimes forget it's not just in City Hall,
Mhm.
but it's in all departments that make up the city. So it is really crucial to my mind that we have really strong, solid IT services and talented individuals in those positions. We never know when all of a sudden our Wi-Fi is going to go out, for example, when the budget is being presented. And there have been other instances, and we, like many organizations, have had to pivot, the word I like using least. But the pandemic did indicate to us the need to be flexible and look at new ways of doing things. So I appreciate that. And I do think that the IT area has grown far more complex and is deserving of being a separate unit. Similarly, I think it is really important that we have solid communications, really top level communications. That's not any comment on the public information specialist and the work that is already being done. However, to have someone with the skill set we're looking for to really serve our internal, just as you said, both our internal communications and certainly our external communications, where I think we could really build better capacity in those regards. There have been a number of occurrences, just most recently, the gas leak and the impact on a particular neighborhood in the city of Ithaca and all the resources that were brought to bear in responding to that pretty potentially scary situation and having to get information out very quickly. So communication is really important and is growing in complexity. And as our organization becomes more complex, it's that more important, and certainly is the case for technology issues as well.
George.
Thank you, Rob. Alan, with regard to that new position that helps with just simple computer issues and couldn't that be a half-time position once McGonigal and Lewis are out the door?
We have many McGonagals.
I did.
Yeah, I think not enough, George, but I thought I saw a hand on this side of the room. Donna.
So to clarify what you've been talking about with potential new roles, under the administration salary and staff salary, the salary line, does that include some new imaginary roles for which we want encumbered funds?
Yeah, so that should include, if I'm understanding it properly, the communication and outreach director of what would be currently the clerk side of the department,
Mhm.
as well as an IT director on the IT side, keeping my current position as an IT specialist and the other ones that we have, the other two,
Mhm.
the other two positions, and then adding in the help desk person we talked about. So it should cover all of those. The only thing it doesn't cover is the OTR I put in, which would be if we're separating departments,
Mhm.
the IT side would need an administrative supports person of some sort. I picked a job title. Obviously, we need to think about what the right one would be. But we wouldn't have that on the IT side, as the clerk and community outreach department would be its own department in this diagram anyway, that was presented in this view.
Mhm.
And that person wouldn't be there to support the IT. So that's the only reason I put in an OTR. So if the funding for more positions is considered with the thought that we might want to separate them, I think we need to add that position into that budget line as well. And that one's not there, the administrative support for the proposed IT standalone department. But everything else that was in the mayor's budget narrative and proposal for separating out the departments would be included in this amount.
Even though some of that money, to Cantelmo's point earlier, will be encumbered until everything's approved. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, while Alan was talking, I turned around, I saw the Steve nod, so it sounds like it's right.
Okay, and then off topic, the same applies to my earlier question about the city manager. So about half of that money in the city manager line is actually encumbered for the deputy city manager. Is that right?
We will get to the city manager's office,
No, but it's but I'm asking about where we see the unencumbered funds. It's broken up, right?
Mayor, please.
Yes, there are positions that are being proposed that we still need to develop full position descriptions, as I responded on the deputy city manager for public safety. And certainly that is the case for the proposed structure of IT and clerk. You know, if we're looking at a communications director, that's a position description that does not currently exist. So this is theoretical, it is conceptual, it is not specific design.
Okay, but my question is, for those kinds of things, and there's a couple examples floating around now, are they in the department line or are they in some other lump that's the imaginary encumbered fund positioned?
They are in the department's lines
Got it.
currently. Yep.
Thank you.
Cynthia, and then George, and then Rob.
Some of my questions were answered, but I did have another, I'll just put this out there now. Perhaps it's something that is in the queue when the department gets more settled and more fully staffed. I know a previous chief of staff had remarked how beneficial it would be for all of our departments to have a sort of like a tracking system, a ticket system. When somebody calls for a road repair, a street light out, or exterior property maintenance, and then that way it could be tracked where it is in the process. Has it been handed over to someone? Is it still open? Has it been closed? Because as we all know, there's a million things that go on in this organization every single day, often touching many departments, and things can easily remain unresolved for long periods of time, and it's easy to lose track of it, or even who's responsible for it. Have we, in terms of IT, I think it would probably land in your office to try to create something. Is this something that has been considered, explored, perhaps in a work plan somewhere that that might come forward? Because I do believe that, especially as we talk about community engagement, what the community also wants to see is closing that loop when a request is made, and then confirmation that something is done. Is this something that is being considered in any way?
More than considered, I believe we actually have the solution already. That would be the OpenGov enterprise product that has come through council at various times. I'm not sure how detailed it's been since last year's original funding of it. This is a enterprise, they call it application and permitting tracking system. I see it as any place we need to collect information, so on a form, some kind of electronic form, that we need to track and have a process for, works in OpenGov. So the public can go in, and once we build it and they want to report a pothole, we can have a process that does that, that sends it to DPW with oversight from the superintendent of public works, and then gets routed where it needs to go. And at all times, the person who makes that application can log in and see the status. And they'll know exactly where it is, who it is, and they have a communication method right through it to send a message and receive messages from city staff. This is what we've implemented this year with great success, I think, for our special event permitting. That was one of the first things we went live with. The clerk's office is using it now for disability parking placards as well as dog licenses, and we have a number of things we're going to expand to. The building department just had their big release where they're doing building permits, electrical permits, plumbing permits, demolition permits, sign permits, was it inflatable and staging permits. I mean, if they have a permit for it, we're putting it in there if it's not already. EPMO is being, exterior property maintenance is being built right now. So I think I've made a very long answer to your question, but I think we're only limited by our willingness to do it, and we have the willingness. So it then adds staff time. And I think the bigger difficulty is not, do we want to put it in here? It's sometimes we don't actually have the process. What are we doing right now? And it can be very different depending on who picks up the phone. So a lot of it is project management work to figure out what the process is and then what it should be. Because the last thing we want to do is kind of rebuild problems into these systems. That said, that's one of the reasons I had put in, and the mayor included it in her budget. It was, I believe, $30,000 for OpenGov professional services. The IT side, through myself right now, and eventually others in my department, can build these things. It really becomes a matter of timing. So we've put in a funding request, hopefully that will get approved with the budget, to allow OpenGov to continue building at least some of these more complex ones. I think the questions really only become, what do we want in it? And how fast can we get them there? And there are certain things that might not be as good in this as potentially a standalone product. The website has new tools available that we don't own yet, but also allow for information to come to the city and tracking it to the right person and getting feedback. Is that a better tool for maybe some of the things we're discussing? It's possible, because it's designed specifically for that, as opposed to taking this enterprise product and we're fitting our projects into it. But that said, I think we would always want to start with what we already own, what we've already paid for, and we're having success with. So yes, if there's something that you're hearing that we need to get tracked, we need to give away for the public to get information to us. And I have about 20 things on my list right now that I already know of, and I'm sure there's a lot more. So bring them to us, yourselves, as well as the other department heads, senior staff, and members of the public. Let us know what they are, and let's get them in there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
George, then Rob, and then any final questions for Alan?
Recognizing that this is a complex undertaking to provide better services through the clerk's office and IT and better communications, and recognizing that will take more staff. I personally am not comfortable with using funds to create 3 new directorship positions. I'm resistant to that, and I hope that we can listen to the staff we have now about their ideas about how we can do this, and do it as efficiently and as economically as possible.
Thank you, George. Rob?
Thank you. Thanks, Alan. So I actually want to make a point that's kind of counter to George's point, which is I'm very excited by the opportunity to see this perhaps maybe go a little further back to the way it was, because I think what we've learned clearly in the last few years is we have some really serious needs around community engagement and staying ahead of and on top of our technological needs. And so I'm happy to see us give the emphasis that this reorg gives to those things, and to allow that space to really help build the professionalism that those units, those functional units of the city need, that might have been harder to do when you mash it all together in two units that were maybe didn't always have the direct connection. So I really make the counter argument that I think it's important for us to put value there. Now, having said that, we have a lot of competing needs on our budget, and so that's important to keep in mind. But I do want to make sure that we give these functional units the resources and the professionalism they need. So thank you for doing that. Now, I do have a couple of questions. The position you're requesting above the budget, I think you called it administrative coordinator. Is that
Yes.
right? So is that illustrated in the fancy org chart that we've seen?
It is not. That's why I put that
Yeah.
over the top request in.
Okay, because it looks like from the org chart that we're actually asking for 4 new positions, not 3, and I just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand that. Or maybe there were only, maybe it's not 4 new positions, maybe there are not just 2 positions that are being created from existing positions, but maybe there's 3. I don't know. I just need some time to look at the org chart a little more.
Well, if I may,
Yep.
it would be requesting a clerk position.
Yep, that I got.
It would be requesting the new director of community and outreach, whatever
Yep.
the exact title becomes,
That too.
and the IT director, and then it would take away the director of public information and technology. So,
Oh, maybe
so that one would go away at that point.
Okay, maybe that's what makes the difference. So that's helpful. Thank you. And then one final thing, I did notice in the mayor's proposed budget, the one big difference between that and the base budget was around staff development. So I don't know if that's directed at Alan or the mayor. About, that's a pretty significant cut, and I'm just wondering why, and especially at a time when there's all this reorging, it might be a time when we need that kind of funds for staff development. So help me understand. Is it just we needed a place to cut money and that was it?
Well, No, actually, so when Alan proposed his budget, he included funds that we added last year. That were kind of a one-time shot deal.
Okay,
And so he didn't really need the funds, but so we basically took those funds and helped offset some of the increases in some of the other accounts in his departments.
great. Thank you.
Yep.
That's very helpful.
All right, Duxon, I think you're gonna get the last word on PIT.
Yeah, I'll second Rob on the need for public outreach. I don't know that it has to, I mean, to George's point, I don't know that it needs to be a director, someone who is above the city clerk, and we can hash that out in detail later, but I have been long jealous that of the counties, Dominic pumping out press releases. We just don't have the communication that the county or other municipalities do. So other cities, for example, let's just use use Good Cause as an example. So Albany put out like a fact sheet about what this really means. And so if we pass STR regulation, short-term rental regulation, it would be good to have someone who can write this in layperson's terms. Right now, we don't have that. We pass new stuff and people are kind of left to figure it out on their own. So there's that, there's like summarizing meetings. Again, we have minutes, but minutes are not, again, they're not like press release style layperson descriptions of what happened at the meeting. And Dominic is really great at that. So for me, the priority is someone like him and some of these other duties that are listed under key responsibilities. And I might be less interested in someone who is, at the top of the org chart for that area. But again, that's something we can cover later.
Thank you, Duxon. Alan, thank you for joining us this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
My understanding is that Shelley Michelle Nunn is available via Zoom, Scott, is that correct?
Correct. I'm here.
Oh, we can't see you yet, Shelley, but we can hear you. Thanks for joining
Okay,
us.
I'm here with, and Valerie Saul is here.
Hi, Val. Good to hear. Well, good to know that you're there. Oh, I can almost see you now. There we go. Thank you both for joining. I will turn to colleagues for any questions that they may have on HR's proposed budget. Which, just referring to the mayor's budget narrative, really is a zero budget with 25,000 for WADC recommendations. WDAC, excuse me, Workforce Diversity Advisory Committee.
Was there not a new position?
Page 16.
Recruiter of some kind?
That's correct, George. There is, right.
Oh, it's already in the budget?
I can't hear George.
George was asking about the recruiter. George was asking about the recruiter that we had put into last year's budget
It's in the 2023 budget.
and sustained going forward.
Yes.
But not filled.
No, not filled. Soon, hopefully.
Any further questions from colleagues? Duxon.
I'm sorry, it's in the narrative, but I don't remember. That is in the narrative that you've announced your retirement date, but I don't personally know it. And I'm curious how much time we have to fill your seat.
Not a lot.
We're working with an executive search, but we're working with Ian Coyle to fill my position right now.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no further questions for. Did you? Oh, yeah. So seeing no further questions for Cynthia.
Hi, Shelley.
Hello.
Hi. So a couple years ago, we did a climate survey of the staff. And unfortunately, as we were doing this work, COVID hit. I know that there were many recommendations that came out of that work. Can you give us an idea of where we are now, and do we have the resources to continue with the efforts that were underway? I know there are probably many members of council that, like myself, could be refreshed on where we are with that climate survey.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I can give you an update. As you know, when we were in full force and ready to go, COVID kicked in. We had engagement team members from all across the organization. COVID comes in and basically shuts us down for a good little while. The last 2 years, engagement team had a sort of a revised version of the engagement teams. We, instead of having a team for every area of focus, we have one team because we had to start building the teams back up. But they've been functioning for the last 2 years. One of the areas of focus was the compensation. As you know, we had a compensation study. So that has been implemented. There are also, I don't have the list in front of me, but there have been several initiatives that have been implemented. The engagement team has recommended several things. One was our employee celebration, which we had last week, which was a huge success. And it was so wonderful to bring the workforce, employees from all across the workforce together for some recognition and for entertainment. So that was one area. Communications is the other big area. We now have the employee full Q&As, sorry. And yeah, there's several. I mean, I can send around the list of the things that have been implemented based upon the recommendations from the engagement team. In addition to that, this summer we ran a pilot with our workforce that they would have free access to our pools and I'm drawing a blank. There's one other area. The bikes. Employees had access for discounted, sorely discounted rates to rent bikes through the Youth Bureau. So the electric bikes. So there've been I'm trying to think what are some of the other areas. Oh, the other, you may recall that one of the areas of focus was professional development. And we have implemented employee goal setting dialogues or performance reviews with most of all of our non-uniform units. So that was another area that was recommended that we move toward from the climate survey. And right now, the next step would be, we did have I guess I would call it an abbreviated, non-scientific survey that went out about 1.5 years ago, before we started to really get geared up again. And so we did get some information, just wanted to see whether or not the issues that existed when we initially took the survey was still areas that we needed to focus on. And they were. So the engagement team continued to do that focus. And also, I think it didn't directly come out of the climate survey, but you could certainly interpret it that our desire to do HR automation is certainly going to affect communications with our employees and access to information with our employees. So we are working feverishly to do some automation. It has not moved anywhere near as quickly as I would have liked it, but I think things are in place so that moving forward over the course of the next year, there will be some new automation opportunities for the HR department, which will greatly improve life for the employees. So that's just a few things that I can think of off the top of my head.
Can you just elaborate? I'm trying to envision what automation for employees dealing with HR means.
So what it means is, for example, employee self-service is one of the areas that we're looking at through our Munis system, where employees would be able to go on and they can do address changes, they can sign up for things, they can do enrollment. It's basically employee information they could control. Ultimately, they could schedule time off. So there's a lot that we still do on paper that they would be able to do through technology.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. I'll also just add, you provided an excellent, just to the point of Cynthia's first question, you also provided an excellent re-overview of the results of that study at CA earlier this year, and have been providing monthly reports on its updates. So I would encourage colleagues to come to city administration if they'd like to hear further. Any additional questions for HR?
Thanks for all your work. I'm sorry we're gonna lose you. And I want to thank you really for a lot of the DEI work you've done, that you've brought to this city, and hopefully whoever takes your place, really take that, because all that you've done, it haven't captured the city audience the way I would love it to have. But thank you very much. And please Well, hopefully whoever's on that committee finds someone that loves that piece of it. You've done a lot for this city from being here 31 years. I've seen a really change once you were in there.
Thanks, Phoebe.
At this time, I will entertain a motion to table the budget until 6 p.m. tomorrow. Rob, seconded by Chris. All those in favor of tabling the budget till 6 p.m. tomorrow? That carries 10-0. Now I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Jorge, seconded by Tiffany. All those in favor of adjourning this evening? That also carries unanimously. Thank you.